In today's video, I'm going to talk to you about the 8 enemies of resilience. What is resilience? Resilience is the bounce back. How do you recover? How do you rebound once failure happens, once life happens? It reminds me of something Mike Tyson said. He said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Everybody has a plan until you get punched in the mouth. So I don't know what your year is looking like, but I guarantee that life is going to life. Life is going to happen. Things are going to happen. Circumstances are going to happen that you probably did not intend or plan for. Why is that? Well, because it's lifing. So let's start by defining what is resilience. Resilience is the bounce back, the comeback. How do you respond when adversity or challenges happen in life? It reminds me in 2019, which was 7 years ago, this year, I had an incredibly challenging time in my business. And here's what I mean by that. Imagine this: business is thriving. I have a team. I'm the CEO of an office of just shy of 140 agents or so, that the gross revenue is multiple millions of dollars a year. And I'm responsible essentially for making it all, overseeing the leadership team. And at the end of the day, I was the CEO of that business. And also I had another business within that business that was my own personal team. And the people I was in business with during this time was my brother, a best friend, a wife, and other people I would consider friends. And after an all-time high professionally, meaning the highest profitable month I've ever had in my life, of almost breaking $100,000 for the first time, within the next 60 to 90 days, I completely dissolved my team, meaning I was down to being a solo entrepreneur. Well, Chris, why would you do that when you had a thriving business? Well, I'm glad you asked. I did that because essentially I was not responsible. I kept my eye, I was not watching the financials in my business. And so I thought, wow, this is great. We just had our best month ever. And I was doing dumb things. I don't think there's another way to put it. I was just doing dumb things in my life, in my business. And it reminds me of something Dave Ramsey, I learned it from him. He said that you cannot out earn poor spending habits. I can't out earn them, and neither can you. And so it doesn't matter what my income was, my poor spending habits were catching up with me. I'll give you an example of some of the dumb things I was doing. One of the things that I did, I was going out of town frequently for trainings, but I was staying in the best of hotels. And I wasn't just renting a car to get from the airport to where I needed to go. Oh no, I was renting the most premium Mercedes-Benz SUV that I could. Completely unnecessary, just a complete waste of money. I was not paying attention to the finances. Therefore, when I think about resilience, I think about the number one, owning the responsibility that it was my responsibility to pay attention to the money. And so there was some lessons, some growing up that I had to do. There was an opportunity for that there. And yet some of those lessons, they really stuck with me because I remember those conversations with the people that I had to let go of during that time. It was so painful, not only to them, but to me, to have that conversation and let them know that it was time to head a different direction. And so the first enemy that I want to give you is of the 8 enemies is this. I took notes. I don't know if you're like me, I'm a professional yapper. So I promise if I do not have notes, I will get off track. Matter of fact, full transparency, I have trouble staying on track with having notes. Sometimes I could chase the squirrels, and it's like one thing reminds me of another thing, and which is always another story. And so my notes help me be concise. If you're a professional yapper too, put yapper in the comments, because then I know that you are my tribe. So the first thing that I wrote down when I've been thinking about resilience is this. Enemy number 1 is expecting to fail. One thing I learned from John Maxwell is this. He calls it the law of human behavior. I think John Maxwell has more laws than anybody I know, and he calls this one the law of human behavior. The law of human behavior. And it's simply this: sooner or later, you get exactly what you expect out of life. Sooner or later, you get exactly what you expect out of life. I can tell you this, I've helped so many people grow their business or launch their business. And you know how I could tell if they're going to be successful or not? Like, this is 99.999% accurate. It's this. I just listen to them. If I hear them talking about how they're going to fail, how they see the problems instead of the solutions, I just listen to them, and I could tell which direction their business and their life is going to head. So John Maxwell, he's right. He nailed this one. Sooner or later, we get what we expect. Why is that? Because the words that come out of the words don't just come from their mouth. The words comes from their heart. The Bible says, out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. I was just talking to a guy in Bible study this morning about this. One of the reasons that words are important to pay attention to listen to, is because they come from our heart. They just don't come out of thin air. They come from one's heart. So the second one, the first one is expecting to fail. So let me ask you this. By the way, in these eight enemies of being resilient, there's going to be about 2 or 3 that resonate with you at least. And I'd like to hear from you, which one resonates with you the most? And maybe there's more than one. The second enemy of being resilient is that people that have struggled with being resilient, they take challenges in life personally. So there could have been a temptation, and there was a temptation for me to start pulling my identity, meaning who am I as a human being as a result of the circumstances I found myself in my business with. There was an opportunity for me, just like there's an opportunity for you, to take whatever those circumstances are right now that you're in or going through and taking them personally, meaning you start to think it's who you are instead of the situation that you find yourself in. So the enemy number 2 is taking adversity personally. And I wrote this in my notes. We can't perform in a way that's inconsistent with how you see yourself. I'm going to say it again. You will not perform in a way that's inconsistent with how you see yourself. That's an identity. It comes from who you are when no one's watching, when you're not getting the awards and things are not happening. There may be an opportunity for you to figure out what you really believe about you in those down moments. I've heard this before, that circumstances don't make the man, they reveal himself to himself. So one of the gifts that come with the challenge of adversity when life happens is seeing how you respond. Because when the pressure is on, think about this. If I had a lemon and I was squeezing that, what's going to come out? Of course, lemon juice, right? Not lime juice, not apple juice. It's going to be lemon juice. Lemon juice is going to come out of lemon. Why is that? It's because it's what was inside of the lemon. What's my point? When the pressure is on in life, when the squeeze is happening to you, pay attention to what comes out of you. So there's going to be a temptation to taking the adversity personally. And you have to shift. There has to be a shift that takes place. I have to be careful saying that. Shift. SHIFT, that takes place. And that we separate. I better calm down. I'm getting a little bit excited about this. I might be just trying to go fast because the sun's starting to beat down on me and I'm in the Midwest and it's going to be like 97 degrees today. Plus, I've had 2 frogs jump on me. We live on acreage, and so you never know what's going to happen out here. I grew up in Seattle, Washington, big city, and now I live on almost 6 acres in the country, 25 minutes from downtown. And even sitting down, I've had 2 tree frogs jump on me, some type of bug fly past me. You just never know what's going to happen around here. So enemy number 3 is this. It's refusing to take smart risk. Too many people are having near-life experiences. Maybe you've heard of near-death experiences. I'm talking about near-life experiences. Well, Chris, what is a near-life experience? I've never heard of that. I'm glad you asked. A near-life experience is just when you start to put yourself out there, to be bold, to live life by trust or faith, however you want to put it. You start to be like a turtle and stick its neck out. You pull back because you maybe have a little bit of resistance when it comes to taking risk. Because maybe you're like me, you're afraid of rejection or afraid of failure. I think all of us wrestle with that. The key word is to wrestle with it. By the way, you want to win with it, meaning that it's not wise to live life in a way where you avoid risk, that you're always trying to play it safe, because safety is an illusion anyways, right? It's not real. So refusing to take smart risks. Too many people, once they get close to living life to the fullest and winning big, they pull back, they hold themselves back. Instead of moving forward and advancing, they start to retreat and take step backs because they're afraid of failure. Therefore, they're never going to win big. If you want to reach your potential, you have to take chances. You have to shift and take the biggest risk. The biggest risk is playing it safe. I'm going to say that again. The biggest risk is playing it safe. Think about potential. I was talking to a guy in Bible study named Brian that I just met today, and we were praying together, and I was reminded of one of my favorite verses, and it says this. It's in the Old Testament, and it says that, "For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, plans to prosper you and to give you hope in the future." And one of the things about challenging times in life, where resilience is going to matter more than ever, is when, think about this, your current circumstances, your current life where you're at, versus the plans and the potential that's in you because of whose image you're made in. Like, there's a gap there between who you are right now versus who you are in Christ, and meaning your full potential. There's a gap. And sometimes that gap, if I'm being fully transparent, it feels like a Grand Canyon size of gap, meaning that I feel like I couldn't be further from God's plans and the potential that he has for me in my life. Well, there's going to be a shift that has to happen. So if you're used to playing it safe, trying to take the easy way out, you're going to have to shift and take a risk from always trying to play it safe. The fourth one is feeling defeated by adversity. It may not be your fault that you're down, but it's your fault for not getting up. Your current circumstances and situations may not be your fault. Matter of fact, you might be a victim to whatever happened. Maybe it happened to you and there was nothing that you could do about it, right? Think about a kid, right? I had zero control over the environment and the decisions that my parents made or didn't made because I was a kid. So there are times in life where we can be a victim of things, meaning things happen to people, good people even. Bad things happen to good people. And yet, even though it may not be your fault that you're down, it's your fault for not getting up. I trust that you feel empowered as you hear me say that. That even today, if you find yourself in a situation you're not proud of, and that you would feel shame or embarrassed if the world or even maybe a friend knew about it, I hope that you find this encouraging, because where you could take responsibility is getting up and moving forward. I like to think about taking the next step or doing the next right thing is another way to put it. This is where most people camp out. They sit in the story of what happened instead of realizing that they can move forward and take their next step and write the next chapter. So here's the shift that's going to have to take place. Getting up is a decision, not a feeling. So if you're sitting around, you're praying, you're hoping, you're talking to mentors and your friends thinking that somehow things are magically going to change, I hate to be the bearer of bad news. It's not. The only way things are going to change is if you change. And part of that change is it's faith with works, meaning, yes, believe and trust for better, but also get up and take action. Find a way to take action. So number 5 is listening to negative self-talk. How is your self-talk? Would you ever talk to a dear friend like you talk to yourself? I'm an encourager. And yet, the truth is that I could encourage the heck out of you or someone else. Matter of fact, I trust that this episode you found helpful, that it's reached you, and something you would consider this a timely message, a timely word. There's something that resonates and has stood out to you and that you found beneficial. And yet I could be the encourager to you and be so critical of myself, meaning that if you could hear the thoughts that went on in my head, not about you, but about me, we both might be shocked. So one of the things that you're going to have to watch out for is enemy number 5, which is listening to negative self-talk. Words matter, period. I'm going to repeat it. Words matter, end of story. So pay attention to what comes out of your mouth, in particular about you. What is it you think about you when it's just you and no one else around? What you say to yourself when nobody listening, it matters big time, and it's shaping your life. Here's a shift that needs to happen. All transformation starts with self-awareness. So step number 1 is to become aware. How do you do that? You audit, you pay attention to your thoughts. And then next, I would encourage you to do that for a day. Or maybe if you have the desire to, do it for an entire week. There's a guy in a group I'm a part of. We meet on Wednesday mornings, and he said this, that he started keeping a little journal of how many times he was critical to his wife. He would put tally marks in it. And he shared the number of how many times, I think it was in a day or a week, and both of us were completely shocked. The reason I'm sharing that with you is because for him, being aware of all the little critical remarks he was saying to his spouse, his wife, he didn't realize how much he was doing it until he started doing the math and looking at the tally marks. So you may have to audit your inner thoughts and write down what you're saying to yourself. Enemy number 6, and we got 2 more after this one, so we're almost there. Losing your sense of humor. Sometimes at the end of the day, we just need to laugh at ourselves. Matter of fact, I just did that when I was setting up. I was thinking, man, it's starting to warm up a little bit out here. And yet outdoor lighting is always better than indoor lighting. And it was a little bit cooler, and I had the umbrella up. But even as I was sitting here, 2 tree frogs fell on me, scared me, a horsefly, because the neighbor has horses, and a camel. And there was just all kinds of stuff going on here. And so sometimes my point is that you just got to laugh at yourself. And I know it's one thing to have tree frogs fall on you and all that. And your situation, you might find yourself with something more serious going on. Like I remember a time where we didn't really have the extra money and my wife had a flat tire. Well, no big deal. I'm gonna air up the flat tire. Well, the flat tire led to needing to replace the tire, which led to, I'm gonna shave off some of the stories just to get to the point. The flat tire led to replacing the tire. Replacing the tire led to new lug nuts because one of them broke, which led to, because it broke, we needed new stems for the thing that holds the lug nuts. You tracking with me? And then after that, we realized that the brakes are wore out. So now we needed to replace the brake pads. And then when replacing the brake pads, the thing that holds the brake pad fluid, whatever that's called, started to come out. So we had to, all of these things happen at a super inconvenient time. And it just got to a point where I just sat down and I just laughed, because it was one of those things where it's like everything that could go wrong went wrong. And I just sat down and I laughed for a few minutes. So one of the things that we may need to do is to make sure that you don't lose your sense of humor. So enemy number 6 is losing your sense of humor. When you can't laugh anymore, perhaps you've lost your perspective. And by the way, humor is a sign of health, not weakness. It's actually a sign of health. And here's a shift that may need to happen in your mindset, that finding something to laugh out about today, even in the middle of difficulty. You know, it's funny. Right now I could hear goats. So there's another animal. So laugh at yourself. It may do your heart and use some good today. Enemy number 7 is failing to learn from mistakes. Failing to learn from mistakes. I believe success is a series of failures stacked up on top of each other. The people that have the most success are often filled with the stories of one failure that led to the next, A mentor of mine says, fell forward and fell fast. Matter of fact, that's another book by John Maxwell. But every mistake could lead to data that helps us learn and get better. The problem isn't failing. It's failing the same way twice because you never stop to ask what happened. It's Groundhog Day. It's living the same results over and over. Matter of fact, I've heard it put this way. Albert Einstein said that insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. So surely none of us are insane. And yet if you find yourself making the same decisions day after day and thinking that you're going to get different results, well, you're going to have to take that up with Albert Einstein. Good luck. So you just want to avoid failing the same way over and over because you want to be a learner. You want to learn from your failures. And matter of fact, that's what learning from your failures is what makes them not a failure. It just makes them a lesson learned or a mistake. So here's a shift that needs to happen. The shift that may need to happen is this. After every setback, ask this question. What did I learn? What do I now know that I didn't realize until that result happened? It's as simple as that. And here's the last one. We're going to end on number 8. 8's the number of abundance from a biblical standpoint. I'm fascinated with numbers and the meanings. And so the 8th one is this. The 8th enemy of is losing your perspective. The person interested in success has to learn to view failure as an opportunity to learn, and part of the process cannot be avoided. So think about it as the tax for the path of success, meaning you cannot avoid it. And why would you want to? Once you learn those lessons and you identify them, I mean, you can help others, right? You can share those lessons with family members or friends if they ask you for some input, right? Don't go giving your unsolicited advice. Shout out to David Higginbotham. Hi, David. If you're watching this, one thing I learned from him is that unasked for feedback is often received as criticism. So don't just go swinging around your lessons learned and the wisdom that you have now. Let people ask you, and life may present an opportunity for you to not only benefit from the lesson you learned the hard way, and yet maybe you'll be able to share that with others. Maybe you could write a book about it or start your own podcast about it. Perspective is the difference between this is the end and this is the beginning of something better. So here's the shift that may need to happen in your mindset. I call it the zoom out, meaning where you are right now is not where you're staying. You don't have to stay where you are at right now, because if you have breath in your lungs, you still have an opportunity to be better, to think bigger, to learn the lesson, and to continue to move forward in your business. So I want to end with this. Back to the story that I shared with 2019. Even though it was so painful to feel like I was, and not just feel like, to actually disappoint the people that trusted me the most, even though it all worked out, some of those lessons are invaluable. I just can't put a price tag on them, and I'll never forget because of the person it made me, because I refused to be a victim of my circumstances, meaning that I identified the lessons. And I want you to think about this. Resilience isn't in a moment you fall, but it's in the 8 decisions you make after. So here's your challenge. I wrote this out because it's important. Pick any one of these 8 enemies of resilience that we've identified that hit you the hardest today. Don't just skip past this and move to the next podcast or next episode. I want you to write down the top 1, 2, or 3 of these items around being resilient that resonated with you. Write them down. And over the next 24 hours, I want you to think about the one that stands out, that hits you the hardest, right where you're at. And I want you to figure out one small, deliberate behavior, not some big, necessarily dramatic action, but one small thing that you can do as a result. So maybe for you, it's identify the lesson, because until you identify the lesson, you're going to remain stuck. So what's the lesson? In my language, it would be, what's the lesson God wants you to learn? Write it down. And if you're bold enough, share it to me, or share it with a trusted family member or friend. Make it a focal point. Make it a conversation in your prayer this week with God. Like, actually think about it. Don't move too quickly past it. Really chew on it is another way to put it. So I trust that this has been helpful. Share with me, out of the 8 enemies that we've talked about of resilience, which one has resonated with you the most? And I trust that this has been helpful and beneficial, and we'll see you next week. Bye for now.